They thought I was helpless. They thought I was quiet. They thought I wouldn't fight back, not when 96 brand. New homes were already standing on my soil they never paid for, never asked permission to touch, never even bothered to check. Deed on. But the thing about people who build their little empires on stolen ground is that eventually the truth comes knocking. And when it does, it doesn't ask politely. Stay with me until the very end, because I'm going to tell you something important that you need to hear. The story starts on a warm Arizona morning, the kind that smells like sun, baked dirt, and quiet peace. My land, 42 acres of untouched scrub and mesquite, had been in my family since before I was born. No house, no business, just open sky and silence, and then the silence broke. I remember the first rumble. Not thunder, engines. When I walked up the ridge, I saw dust clouds rising like something was tearing the earth open. Trucks, cranes, concrete mixers, an entire construction fleet marching across my property like they owned it. At first, I thought I was mistaken. Maybe they were on the neighboring parcel. But then I saw it, a bright white sign hammered right into my soil, coming soon Sunrise Meadows, a 96 home HOA community. I felt something draining out of me. Like the land itself exhaled in disbelief, I marched down to the site office, a trailer sitting crooked on fresh gravel. Inside, a man in a button-up shirt didn't even look up from his laptop when I said, "This is my land." He smirked. A slow, practiced HOA board member smirk. "Sir, this parcel belongs to Sunrise Development Holdings. Says so right here." He tapped a printed deed. I stared at that paper. Wrong everything, wrong date, wrong signature, wrong notary. They'd bought the parcel next to mine, then built on both, assuming they were one large tract. And nobody checked, not the developer, not the county, not the HOA. They were already forming before a single roof was finished. I walked out of that trailer knowing one thing: if I wanted justice, I had to be patient, and patience is a weapon most people overlook. So I let them build. For 10 long months I watched the houses rise, beige walls, clay roofs, driveways poured in assembly line rhythm. 96 homes, 46 of them entirely on my land, the rest half in, half out. The HOA started emailing residents before the paint was dry. Rules, fines, landscaping restrictions. They acted like kings of a kingdom that wasn't theirs. Let them finish, I told myself. Let them spend their millions. Let them dig the hole so deep they forget which way is up. Then came the day the first buyers arrived, bright smiles, new mortgages, dreams of suburban peace. I felt bad for them, truly, but this wasn't their fault. It was the HOA arrogance, the developer's negligence. And arrogance demands consequences. So I waited until the ribbon-cutting ceremony, when the HOA board, the developers, and the city officials gathered on a makeshift stage. They applauded themselves like heroes. The HOA president, the same smirking man from the trailer, grabbed the microphone. "Welcome to Sunrise Meadows, the finest new community in—" "Excuse me," I said, stepping forward. "My name is Daniel Hart, and you're all standing on my land." The crowd murmured. Cameras turned toward me. I pulled out a folder. Inside, the original deed, the county records, a land survey. And the letter my attorney drafted the night before. The HOA president laughed nervously, waving his hand. "Security, please escort." My attorney cut him off. "Sir, I wouldn't do that, because as of this moment, Sunrise Meadows is in violation of property law, zoning ordinances, and trespass statutes. My client will be filing for full injunctive relief." Silence, dead, heavy silence, the kind you feel in your bones. Homebuyers' faces drained. Developers' smiles collapsed. The HOA president's confidence evaporated like water on desert asphalt. Within 48 hours, we were in court. The judge looked over the documents. Then she looked at the developers like they were children who'd been caught stealing cookies while the jar was still in their hands. Her ruling was simple, devastating, and perfect. This entire subdivision was constructed illegally on land that does not belong to you. The deed clearly proves ownership. All operations of Sunrise Meadows HOA are hereby frozen pending further litigation, and all parties are ordered to negotiate with Mr. Hart or vacate. The HOA president whispered, "You can't do this." I smiled. I already did. The courthouse hallway smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. Developers huddled in small circles, whispering into their phones, trying to salvage what was left of their reputation. Realtors were pacing like caged animals, and the HOA president, he just sat there, staring at the floor as if it might swallow him whole. But me, I walked out into the sunlight with a calm I hadn't felt in months. I didn't win yet, no. This was just the opening move. But now the battlefield was mine, and everyone knew it. The negotiations started the next morning. They rented a polished conference room downtown with wide windows overlooking the city, a setting meant to intimidate, to say we're the ones with power here. But the truth, power doesn't come from glass buildings or tailored suits. It comes from the land, and the land was mine. They offered the first deal, $400,000 for the acreage, clean and simple. I almost laughed. My grandfather bought the land in 1966 for barely a heartbeat of what it was worth now. And these people, who had built 96 homes across my property without permission, thought they could bargain like we were haggling over a used truck. I closed the folder in front of me. "No," I said, "try again." Their second offer came with forced smiles, $650,000. We'll also name you honorary founder of the community. Honorary founder, that was the funniest thing I'd heard all year. I leaned back and let them sweat. Because here's the truth. Every single day that passed, every hour those homes sat on land they didn't own, every HOA email they sent, fees, rules, threats, it all became more evidence. More leverage, and leverage was worth more than money. Finally, the developer's attorney leaned forward, the shine in his eyes gone. "What do you want, Mr. Hart?" The room quieted. Everyone stared. I looked out the window for a moment, 42 acres of my family's history flashing in my mind. The cowboy boots my grandfather wore walking this land. The nights my father camped with me under the desert stars. My own promise never to let anyone touch what they built. Then I spoke. "I want every home appraised, every lot, every driveway, every inch of construction on my land accounted for, and I want full market value." The attorney blinked. That would be expensive. I finished for him. Good. The HOA president slammed his pen on the table. "This is extortion." I turned to him calmly. "No, this is ownership." The next month was a storm, surveys, appraisals, meetings. The developers realized quickly that the cost wasn't going to be hundreds of thousands. It was going to be millions. $10.4 million to be exact. But the best part, the HOA president, the smirking man who dismissed me on day one, had signed off on almost every construction decision. His name was everywhere. He wasn't just a bully. He was a liability. 2 weeks later, during one of the final negotiations, he exploded. "You think you can just take our community, undo everything we built?" I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't need to. You didn't build a community." I told him, "You built a mistake, and mistakes have consequences." He stormed out. The developers didn't follow him. By late fall, the final deal was signed. I became the landowner and the landlord. Every home on my acreage, every single one, was now paying me ground rent, long, term, binding, legally airtight. Some residents thanked me, some glared at me, most were just stunned, but I wasn't out for revenge on them. They were victims of the HOA and the developers as much as I was. The real justice came 2 weeks later when the HOA held an emergency election. The entire board, including the president, was voted out by furious residents who'd had enough. He lost everything: his title, his salary, his influence. The community he once ruled now shut him out. And me, I walked the neighborhood one last time, hearing children playing in yards that used to be empty desert, seeing porch lights flicker on at dusk, feeling the land alive again, my land, but I didn't need fences, signs, or battles anymore. Because the deed, the real deed, was back where it belonged, in my hands. The desert winds were colder now, carrying winter across the valley in slow, steady breaths. I stood at the edge of my property, the same ridge where I first heard the engines, where I first saw dust rising like an omen. Except now, instead of confusion and anger, I felt something different: closure, a long time coming. The settlement money had already been wired, the contracts finalized, the former HOA board had vanished like a bad memory carried away by the wind. And the developers, well, they were still trying to spin their story for the local papers, but the truth was stronger than any headline they could buy. I wasn't a villain. I wasn't a hero. I was simply the owner who refused to be erased from his own land. The community, Sunrise Meadows, was changing too. When the scandal hit the local news, residents realized just how deeply they were tied to a mistake that wasn't theirs. Some were angry, some were embarrassed, but most were determined to rebuild their community stronger, smarter, and without the corruption that had poisoned it from the start. I didn't expect what came next. One crisp December evening, a woman named Mara, one of the first buyers, knocked on my door. She was holding a small box wrapped in simple brown paper. "We had a vote," she said. "The whole community. We wanted to thank you." I frowned, surprised. Thank me? For what? For not letting them bury this, and for not bulldozing us to get what you deserved. She handed me the box and left before I could say anything. Inside was a single object, a brass compass, heavy, old, polished with care, on the back, engraved by hand, "For the man who kept us from getting lost." At Sunrise Meadows I sat there holding it, feeling something warm rise in my chest. Maybe justice didn't always come as a victory in court. Sometimes it came in the form of people learning, growing, understanding the land beneath their feet. People who once feared me now grateful. A week later, I attended the neighborhood's first town hall meeting under the new leadership. They invited me as a guest, not an enemy, not a landlord, but a voice they wanted to hear. The new HOA president, a soft-spoken retired teacher named Raymond, stood at the podium. "We want to rewrite how this community operates," he said, "with transparency, with honesty, with respect for the land we live on, and we'd like to ask Mr. Hart to join our advisory board, not to control us, but to guide us." I looked out at the faces in the crowd, families, young couples, retirees, people who simply wanted a peaceful place to call home. And for the first time, I realized something important. This land had brought me trouble, but it also brought them hope. I smiled and nodded. "I'll help, but only if you promise one thing." Raymond tilted his head. "And what's that?" "Remember what happened here. Not the fight, not the lawsuits, but the lesson. Land isn't just dirt. It's responsibility. Take care of it, and it'll take care of you." The crowd applauded. Not loud, not chaotic, but warm. The kind of applause that feels like healing. That night, I walked home under a sky scattered with stars. The compass weighed gently in my pocket, ticking softly with each step. The desert air felt cleaner, lighter. The homes still stood where they were built, but now they stood with truth beneath them. Justice wasn't about tearing anything down. It was about setting things right. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply reclaiming what's yours and choosing forgiveness where others expected fury. The land was still mine, the peace was finally mine, and the future, well, that belonged to all of us.